everyone, my name is Sonia. In this video, we are going to discuss about single cell protein and biogas plant. Let's start with single cell protein. Single cell protein, also called SCP. What is single cell protein? Single cell protein refers to edible unicellular microorganisms. The biomass extract from pure or mixed cultures of algae, yeast, fungi, and bacteria may be used as an ingredient or a substitute for protein-rich foods. SCP is suitable for human consumption or as animal feeds. Microorganisms used for SCP production. First of all, algae. Algae like chlorella and spirulina are used as single-cell protein. Spirulina is a well-accepted food in world over. It contains 65 to 70% protein. Next important algae is chlorella. Chlorella is a good source of several vitamins, minerals and antioxidants. Next is fungi. Agaricus campestris and Saccharomyces cerevisiae are the two important fungi used for SCP production. Mushrooms are rich in proteins and antioxidants. It used directly as a human food. Yeast is the most widely accepted microorganism for production of SCP because of its superior nutritional quality and acceptability. Next is bacteria. Pseudomonas fluorescens and lactobacillus are used as SCP. It contains high protein. Next is advantages and disadvantages of SCP. Advantages of algae is easy to grow and harvest. Algae contains high quality protein. Disadvantages of algae is non-digestible cellulosic cell wall and it concentrates heavy metals. This is not good for health. Advantage of fungi is easy to grow and harvest. Its disadvantages is low growth rates. Advantages of yeast is larger in size comparing other microorganisms. Its familiarity and acceptability is high. Disadvantages is poor digestibility, low protein content, slow growth rate. Advantages of bacteria: high protein content and digestible cell wall. Disadvantages of bacteria is small in size comparing other microorganisms and low density. Next is production of SCP. SCP production involves following steps, mainly 5 steps: selection of suitable strains, fermentation, harvesting, post-harvest treatment, processing of SCP for food. Here we can see a schematic representation of SCP production. In SCP production, first step is selection of suitable strain. Selection of suitable strain for SCP production must take several characteristics. First one is high growth rate and productivity. Second one is low cost substrate to be used. Third one is temperature and pH tolerance. Fourth one is oxygen requirements and heat generations. Fifth one is growth morphology and genetic stability in the fermentation. Sixth one is ease of recovery of SCP for further downstream processing. Other major factors are safety and acceptability. Next step in SCP production is fermentation. Fermentation is done in a large chamber called fermenter. It should be done under sterilized conditions. Usually, fed batch cultures are used for the fermentation. Next step in SCP production is harvesting. Microbial colonies are harvested when they are fully developed. The bulk of cells are removed from fermenter by decantation. Next step in SCP production is Post-harvest treatment. After harvesting, the cells are subjected to a variety of processes. Post-harvesting treatments include centrifugation, washing, drying, etc. Next step is processing of SCP. Pure protein isolation can be done by disrupting cell wall through crushing, crumbling, cycles of freezing, thawing, grinding and thermal shocks. Next is uses of single cell protein. SCP is rich source of protein, vitamin, amino acids, minerals and crude fibers. SCP is a popular health food. SCP provides valuable protein-rich supplement in human diet. SCP lowers blood sugar level. In cosmetics, SCP is maintaining healthy hair. Many herbal products contains SCP. SCP is used in poultry. It is used as cattle feed. Advantages of single cell protein. The growth rate of microorganisms is high. Some microorganisms can double their mass within 30 minutes. One important point is both the quality and quantity of protein from microbes are better than animals and plants. Genetic manipulation is easy in microbes. Another important point is waste materials can be used as a substrate in SCP production. This helps to reduce pollution. The production of microbes does not depend on the climate conditions. Disadvantages of SCP. Production of food grade SCP is expensive. Next is presence of toxic substances. In SCP, nucleic acid content is high. Next point is contamination of pathogenic microorganisms. SCP causes indigestion and allergic reactions. Regular consumption of SCP can lead to gout and kidney stone. Now let's move on to the next topic, biogas plant. What is biogas? Biogas is a mixture of gases primarily consisting of methane and carbon dioxide. Biogas produced from agricultural waste, manure, green waste or food waste. It is a renewable energy source. Next is biogas plant. A biogas plant is where biogas is produced by fermenting biomass. The substrate used for the production of this gas usually consists of energy crops such as corn or waste materials such as manure or food waste. The material which is used in biogas plant for producing biogas called biomass. Some forms of biomass: animal dung, poultry waste, plant waste, industrial waste, domestic waste, etc. Here we can see a flow chart of biogas production. First step is waste collection. Second step is pre-treatment. And third step is mixing. Fourth step is waste feeding into anaerobic tanks. Next step is anaerobic digestion. After anaerobic digestion, biogas and sludge is produced. Principle of biogas plant. The principle of biogas plant is to produce the gases like methane and other side products like carbon dioxide, etc. by decomposing the biomass in the absence of air and presence of water. Decomposing means breaking down the complex substances into the simple or basic substances. Absence of air means anaerobic fermentation. This diagram clearly shows the working of biogas plant. This is the slurry region or mixing tank. The side product manure is deposited in this region. Working of biogas plant. The inlet of biogas plant is the mixing tank. In this mixing tank, the biomass is mixed with the water to form a slurry. Slurry is a composition of water and the biomass. The mixing tank is also called slurry region. Then this slurry enters the digester. The digester is an area with the absence of oxygen and the presence of microorganisms. These bacteria are capable of decomposing the substances in absence of oxygen. These microorganisms in the digester decompose the biomass, that is, breaks down the complex substances into the basic substances like methane, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfate. Produced gases are stored in the gas tank. Required gases are taken out through the gas outlet. Other side products other than gas is manure and fertilizers. Classification of biogas plant is mainly two types: fixed dome type biogas plant and floating drum type biogas plant. Fixed dome type biogas plant. The fixed dome type biogas plant consists of a closed underground digester tank. It is made up of bricks which has a dome shaped roof, also made up of bricks. The spent slurry is replaced from time to time with fresh slurry to continue the production of biogas. Here we can see a diagram of fixed dome type biogas plant. Underground digester tank made up of bricks. Mixing tank is here. This is gas outlet. Spent slurry is deposited in this region. Floating drum type biogas plant. Floating drum plants consist of an underground digester. It is cylindrical or dome shaped and a moving gas holder. The gas holder floats either directly on the fermentation slurry or in a water jacket of its own. The gas is collected in the gas drum, which rises or moves down according to the amount of gas stored. This is the underground digester tank. Floating gas holder is here. Biogas collects here. It's floating type. Mixing tank and spent slurry is here. Comparison between floating drum type biogas plant and fixed dome type biogas plant. Floating drum is more expensive comparing fixed dome type. Corrosion of floating drum type is comparatively high. Maintenance is more in floating drum type because drum requires painting and flexible gas pipe requires replacement. Maintenance in fixed dome type is less because no steel part is used and gas pipe is fixed type. Thermal insulation is bad in floating drum type but good in fixed dome type. Scum troubles is less in floating drum type and more in fixed dome type. Gas production per unit volume of digester is high in floating drum type and low in fixed dome type. Advantages of biogas plant. Biogas is eco-friendly. Biogas generation reduces soil and water pollution. Biogas generation produces organic fertilizer. It's a simple and low-cost technology that encourages a circular economy. Biogas is a clean fuel. Disadvantages of biogas plant. Biogas contains impurities. The technology is not completely efficient and developed. Less suitable for dense metropolitan areas. Initial cost of installation of the plant is high. Requires regular maintenance. Uses of biogas. Biogas can be used for the production of electricity. Biogas is commonly used in rural areas as cooking gas. Biogas can replace compressed natural gas for use in vehicles. Biogas can displace carbon dioxide in on-site CHP plants. Thank you for listening.